Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to try and figure out what the future lies for smarter buildings. Our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org if you are wondering who we are. And just important point to note, the views expressed here are personal and not of any company or organization. And let's do make it as interactive as possible on the Zoom chat. Looking forward to that. And this slide deck is actually on the homepage of mondaylive.org, so you can head over there if there's anything you want from any of the things that we presented. So this being October, we've been talking about system of systems this is the third week now, so we're continuing that. So it's been interesting so far. So looking forward to today and next week. And so our normal chit chat, news and trends, and then on the system of systems, we want to really focus on the concept of integrating systems when they're interoperable within a system of systems, right? So we'll break that apart in a bit because I think there's a lot of learnings there. And all of this is really mostly to dig in deeper on what systems is all about and how it impacts us. So looking forward to that discussion. Before that, hand it over to Ken.
Thanks, Anto. Lots going on at Automated Buildings. Big thing is we're starting to populate our AHR sessions, get the speakers all lined up and get them committed. Most of them we've had some preliminary discussions with, but we're just firming up the dates and times and going through that shuffle now. So it's coming together well. Our theme for AHR Orlando is scaling up, and we see the scaling as an integral part of all of the things we're talking about, system to systems, AI, magnifying the ability of our talent. We're basically flipping the concept of that we need to get a combination of talent and tech is the new future for us all. We can't get people. We've got good people. We just need to amplify those good people. And AI is a way of doing that. And basically system of systems and cloud native and all of these things we're talking about are there. An article there, scaling up best practices for expanding automated building systems. That kind of came as even a surprise to me. It's got just some general information that gets us started. Keith has been posting some stuff on LinkedIn about fear, and of course he's fearless, so that's good. And we had one of our other contributing editors talking about standing out, and I think those are sort of two subjects that we kind of have lacked in the past as an industry, is being fearless and knowing we're right and just moving ahead and let's just do what we got to do. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to do that as an industry. Been having a lot of discussions and deja vus about when we started Automated Buildings. It was the .com .bomb days, and we had all kinds of money falling out of the sky to create .com companies that were, some of them weren't all that real, but they basically shaped us. And I think we're back in that era that people know there's gold in them thar hills, and the gold is in AI, and it is in all of system of systems, basically just changing our thinking and using the power of what is already existing and looking at examples. And it's fairly easy for folks to piece concepts together. Whether they can deliver on what they say is another issue, but I think it provides an important piece of our industry, because if we go back and take a look at the .com .bomb days, that's how we grew. There was a bunch of radical change, and eventually it all shakes out. And I think we're right in the midst of that change. Anyway, a few other things. As Anto said, the theme is system of systems. We basically have taken last Monday's YouTube and turned it into a too long did not read or too long did not listen to. So there's a summary of that, and below that is the system of systems, the key to unlocking building intelligence, which is from the Monday before. Good stuff. I think these summaries are valuable, and we're going to keep doing them because they're starting to, that messages, not everybody has the hour to sit here and listen to what it is we're talking about, but they do have the time to kind of read over the summary, and we've attached the actual YouTubes to them. And thank you, Anto, for unleashing the script and stuff too, because that makes it really, when you're trying to find what somebody said, you can kind of skim through, and if you see the words flying by, then you can stop and give it a listen and listen to what that particular person said. So yeah, I think we're coming up with a method of trying to communicate what it is we're doing at Monday Live and C4SB to the public, and that's starting to turn into our readership. Down in the corner there is a other article that was on our site. It was actually a post. AI's one from one of our sponsors, AI's impact on the BMS industry. We're starting to see all kinds of innovative ways and how people are using all of these technologies. And I think it's a good play for us as Automated Buildings to let you post those articles and tell the people how you're using system of systems, how you're using AI, because there's a lot of excitement and a lot of power. And the other one we talked about last week was the combining of partners. So for people that are missing a piece of their technology, we're seeing that they're very susceptible to partner up with another company in the industry for a particular purpose. This is interesting because all of these concepts, systems of systems and AI, allow us to couple and decouple quicker than we've ever been before. And again, that feeds back to our scaling theme that we're taking to Orlando. So I think I probably caused enough confusion with all of those interrelationships, and I'll give it back to you, Anto.
Yeah, your point about this feeling like the dot-com days, yeah, there's definitely a lot of change. Were you referring specifically just to our industry, or were you saying tech-wise or globally?
Tech-wise and globally.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, it's just a hurricane out there. I mean, anybody who's on social media, it's every post is interesting, and I try to keep focused on Automated Buildings, but the lines are blurring. We're actually becoming mainstream, and we're becoming one of the things that is going to see some of the greatest change, I think. But the changes are amazing as well. There's just all kinds of politics has got involved in it. There's just, yeah, it's just a whole new world. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, agree. We're very much part of it.
Yep. May you live in exciting times. You know, that old Chinese curse. We do. Okay. We live in exciting times.
Thanks, Ken. So I think most of you would know by now, I live in Asheville, and the past few weeks has been a little bit challenging for us because of the hurricane. And we turned into climate refugees, and we went over to New York, where we have 2 sons and a whole bunch of friends, and managed to get a lone apartment for us, which is wonderful. And this is the picture of it. It's wonderfully located. It was on Broadway, two blocks away from Central Park. So Monty loved it. So all of that was great, except when I looked in the entrance, this is what it had on it.
Ah,
And I felt very, I didn't know what to feel. I felt partly sad, but partly kind of amazed. I don't know. I thought I'd just share it. I did wonder how many of the buildings around that area were like this.
You know,
Probably yes.
it's interesting you bring that up, and because we all are familiar with local law 97, and you know, things like that are programs, you know, to encourage making the buildings more energy efficient, sustainable, et cetera. And I know in talking to some building owners and operators in New York about that, they told me this says, you know what, we don't care. We are not going to go forward with meeting local, in this case, local law 97 requirements and compliances. You know what? At the end of the day is we'll face the fine, or you know what? We're going to pass the fines on to the tenants. And so it's nothing out of our pocket. So interesting, kind of similar to what you're showing here.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and
you know,
and given the prices of property in New York, the fines can actually be quite significant before it actually makes a
Correct.
dent in anybody's pocket, right?
Welcome to the
well-
world of retailers. I mean, they don't care. It's just a cost of doing business. They don't care about energy efficiency. I've really come to believe that.
And those are the ones we ignore.
yeah.
Yep. Now we do. Yep.
There are ones that do care.
yep.
And as we prepare for AHR, one of the guests that hopefully will participate in Monday Live, but she's going to be part of what we do at AHR one way or another, is actually working on multiple projects in New York where her engineering firm is putting IBBs in to monitor building performance after upgrades have been done, or actually during the process of doing upgrades, and you know, having it all be paid for by NYSERDA, or a lot of it be paid for by NYSERDA. So we'll focus on we'll try and focus on the places where people are making money by selling our technology into New York City. And then we will show this picture that Anto put up.
I wonder how many people living there are actually recognizing what this means and whether they take any notice of it.
It's right there by the entrance. I mean,
Yeah,
literally, that's
but
where.
what do they know what it actually?
right.
What's
So
what's the
probably-
measurement criteria for that, Anto? Did you do any research on that?
No, there's a URL at the bottom of this picture. Hard to tell. I went there and I got a 404 error, page not found.
Well,
And
it's not
Is there
hard to
anything-
go, but it's not hard to go to the NYPA or the NYSERDA page to find out what the rating system is. And so for those who want to take it all seriously and would like to be seen as an A or a B, it's not difficult to go find out what that rating is. I don't have the link for it, but it's kind of funny that the post that they've got on it is so.
And
So I-
having,
Anto, what's the ownership structure of the building? Is it apartments, condos, a co-op?
I think
What
it's
is it?
I think it's condos,
Okay, so the owners have a stake.
and the
Okay.
owners don't care.
Is there any,
Well-
any significance in the fact it's held up with suction cups?
and having lived in New York City for several years when I was a young buck, we didn't give a shit. So sorry, and that's New Yorkers, can I say?
So I saw something even more disturbing last week. I'm a new grandpa, by the way. So Keith Jr. finally came in for
Yay.
Yay.
and he was born in Torrance Memorial Hospital, or Little Company of Mary or something like that. And I saw something I had never seen before. I was going to the elevator, and there was a sign, a grade much like this, and it was color coded, and it got a D on seismic stability. And it was like, this hospital may not be standing after a 7.0 earthquake. So it's not designated as emerging. And that was even more disturbing in the interview. It's like, what are you going to do though? I mean, I was like, whoa. But yeah, they actually have a grading system. I never even seen that, where they give out grades for seismic stability of an earthquake in California. But it had the same thing. It was red, it was orange, and it was a D. And it's like, this building might not make it.
And D here is the worst, right? The only thing worse than the only thing worse than D is if you don't report, in which case you're kind of a fail.
Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. It was red. It was yeah. I thought that was very disturbing. But what can I do? I mean, I don't know. That's something.
Oh,
you don't care.
Okay. So the link board is as normal for you to access if you need to. Any other news or thoughts from anyone? Hearing nothing, let us talk about system of systems. And so this is our, while I'm doing this, I'm going to bring Doug, who was with us last week, is going to join us this week as well. So this statement, or this tagline that we have in front of us is kind of interesting because it's kind of an oxymoron, because when systems are interoperable, they just work in a system of systems, right? So you almost don't need the integrating part for interoperable systems to work with each other in SOS. If you remember the comparison that the table that we were looking at the last couple of weeks, integrate and interoperate are sort of the two ways that systems and system of systems connect with other systems, right? So this kind of doesn't make sense because something is not necessary here. But there is, and I'd like to sort of bring this up as a sort of a conversation. There is no other way. There's no other word that I can put here to actually make this make sense. Because if you just take this word out and say interoperable system with SOS, that kind of doesn't make sense because you're trying to do something with it. I asked ChatGPT, of course, and it came up with a whole bunch of words as an alternate to integrating. But I'm not sure anybody would actually use that. And certainly no person such as a building owner or a system integrator or owner's representative or whatever will actually think of, harmonizing your building. Hey, owner, I want to harmonize my building. That's kind of doesn't make sense, right? So I just bring this up because it's just kind of been annoying me for a while. And
I kind of like unifying. It's quite nice.
Yeah, but
making one of the whole thing.
Yep. There's lots of these words that you can make those sort of arguments that are nice. I love orchestrating because that's really what we do to actually make things work. We actually orchestrate things. It's like having a conductor, right? Kind of thing. I was chatting with Doug earlier today, and he was sort of thinking that connecting is the key word, and obviously it is because you've got to connect things together. But you don't hear a conversation about how do I connect there is no way of using the word connecting in that sort of statement of I want everything to work together.
Cisco had Connected Real Estate Initiative. I mean, that was their whole, wasn't it called Connected Real Estate? Cisco Media stuff.
That would have been physical layer.
Yeah, and we don't use it today, so it obviously has not caught on. So anyway, this is kind of just a bit of an aside. But anybody else have any sort of thoughts on this? Because I want to bring Doug into the combo.
I don't think to that statement just made, I don't think people think about this stuff as in ISO layers and that deep. I mean, I think they just think about it, can the systems talk to each other? Connected buildings kind of thing. I don't think that I struggle because like just today, I had a demo with the customer this morning and they raised the IT flag up. It's like, and we're reading from within their system. Our software is just like a browser, right? It's just a browser out from within. It's like, I'm gonna have to hook you to my IT department and all that stuff. I'm like, this just like, I don't remember having this conversation when I was a Honeywell tech or a Johnson engineer setting up a front end. I would just show up. Yeah, I'm here to set up this, Kaiser Hospital. I'm here to set up this front end. There wasn't no protracted, IT discussion about it. And then they never told me no. So I'm wondering what's changed. Whereas I got absolutely no pushback as a low-level service technician to set up a front end, and pretty much our software gateway is essentially the same thing. And that's what I told them. I said, it's just like a front end, it's not. We're not going to poke a hole through your firewall. We don't need a VPN. Our system is a reverse host interface. So it actually goes out, posts the data every minute or every 5 minutes or whatever. And then it actually reads the new command that was calculated from the previous 5-minute post. So there's no IT involvement whatsoever. Can you browse to my website? Is what I always ask my customers. And I said, before we get into the IT discussion, let's establish the value proposition before we even get down there. And oh, by the way, I'm going to talk to your IT department. I'm not going to arm you with a bunch of FAQs that you won't be able to explain properly. So I said that conversation happens between me and your IT department at the appropriate time. So I feel like we've laid this groundwork of dysfunctionality with these IT departments where other business segments haven't. Any comments on that?
We've seen the same thing over the years, and it's gotten worse. And I think that the facility departments now are trained to defer immediately to IT. And the problem is that you often don't get a discussion with IT when you need to. But when you're looking at the solution that the interoperable system of systems provides, there's still an education gap with getting through to IT people that are intelligent enough to understand the story. Yeah. So what we've tried to do over the years is try to use pure IT technology and show the IT people how we're working within their framework. But I think that's a very interesting question when we get to the IBB is how does that question get disarmed?
Well, you don't want your customer having that conversation, especially your facility management, your engineer or your energy manager having that. So he's like, can you send me any information on your IT connectivity? I was like, no, they're like, it's like giving a little kid a pair of scissors. Like they're just going to run and hurt themselves. Like you don't want.
Yeah, no, we try to disintermediate that right away as well.
So Anto, I'm not sure you want to need the word integrating at all, because you're proposing a solution called SOS, and so hear me out. Interoperating systems with SOS is what I think is all you need, and I think what we need to do is distinguish between integrating versus interoperating. People need to understand the difference between what it means to integrate systems versus interoperating systems, in my mind, because it's not, there's an educational gap there, because there's functional differences. We've been integrating systems for many, many years. We got all kinds of proven ways to get it done. But that doesn't mean they interoperate in the manner in which we're proposing, which is SOS. Okay. So, because I view interoperating meaning that it's a higher level of functionality, both from the user side, from the vendors who provide the systems, the technicians and facility engineers who work with these systems. Interoperating is that the bar is much higher than simply integrating, in the sense of ease of use, the cost of doing it, the extent to which you can access the data, but in a bidirectional sense. So if you had a checklist of all the things that make interoperating better, if you will, more robust, all those characteristics, they would surpass traditional integration. Okay, And so I'm saying drop the word integrating, turn interoperable into an adjective, interoperating systems with SOS. And I think you got it. But I do think regardless, we need to be very clear why we think interoperating or interoperable is a much more
Valuable.
It's much more valuable. It's a much higher requirement than integrating.
I'll jump in because I was hoping that one of you would take the position that Steve just did. So I agree 100% with Steve's viewpoint. You know, integrating and interoperable together, it's an oxymoron. You know, they're separate. And if you were to replace integrating with one thing, it would be designing. Because if you design systems to be interoperable, then there's no need for integrating after those systems have been developed. So the key is about designing these systems to be interoperable. So it comes back to the onus is put on those that are developing these systems that are going into a building. They need to be designed based upon a common model or standard.
Yeah, that's great. Love that.
Reasonable to say that would be-
Ideally, we could, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rick.
Ideally, we'd get to a point where you didn't have to design the systems, you would just choose the interoperable systems. There would be enough systems that are already designed to be interoperable that now you just choose the ones that are interoperable and you compose your solution from interoperable systems.
That was the point I was going to make. What about the 70 to 80% of the legacy and proprietary systems that were not designed?
Right.
Well, the task ahead for those is to provide some kind of interface to make them interoperable.
Okay.
They are not inherently going to be interoperating within itself because they are what they are, right? But you can definitely create an interface. You can extract and feed it some data from outside. That makes it interoperable.
We're back to gateways, Keith.
No,
Yeah.
no. We're saving the punchline for next week. There is a solution. There's a solution on the table. And we've been talking about it. It's like the different industries are already starting to design their systems, rewrite their software, create those interfaces, mostly software, some hardware. And like I said, we're kind of saving the punchline for talking about it kind of down the road. But Steve, you just mentioned, get rid of the whole integrated word and replace it with interoperable. And in a project that we're working on in California, that's exactly what we did. We're replacing the word integrated workplace management system with interoperable workplace management system. Yeah. And all the components that make up a classic IWMS are still going to be present, but those modules are not going to be all brought together under one hardwired interface. Those systems will all be able to naturally reside where they belong, but they will then be adapted to now be interoperable. So when I say we're saving the punchline, it's because there are these proven IT ways to do this, and that's what we want to advocate for, and we want to be able to show.
Okay, I think we should move on because one of the reasons I invited Doug back on is that there was another paper. Last week we talked about a digital twin IIC paper about system of systems. And I'd like to talk about this paper, which was actually published about three years ago, quite a long time ago. And it was authored by Doug and myself. The sort of the key part of this, it's not about system of systems per se, but it's about thinking about systems in a way that they become interoperable. right? Which is really system of systems. Well, we didn't want to use the word system of systems because we didn't want to talk about that topic for this paper. That was a later paper, which has now been released. So it's just how should we be thinking about systems so that they become interoperable? And the key sort of thing with this paper is actually these 7 concepts. And I'd love to ask Doug to speak to this, because this is really important. Doug, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, hit one button, but not the other. I think a key motivator for us to put together these 7 foundational concepts, they become criteria for how to approach interoperability in a way that scales. So I think I mentioned last week that there's a lot of interoperability standards that exist that are out there that are focused on a specific domain or set of use cases, but then you go beyond that domain or set of use cases, then it starts to fall apart, becomes more Band-Aid approach to making it work. So this becomes really a checklist for what a interoperability mechanism really needs in order to be able to scale cross industry, cross use cases. And the center of it is key, because there are other approaches, I think I mentioned last week, to interoperability that don't put the concept of system in the center. They'll put asset or something else in there that limits its applicability to a broad set of domains. But system, by definition, by generic concept definition, really can apply to almost anything, including equipment, including business systems, agentic systems, which is a hot topic now. They all fall in that category. Everything is a system. And then if you are able to look at everything as a system, then you really just need to create one model for interoperability that is system-based. And that can, that's one of the other tenets there, is model-based. Actionable information, it's a mechanism that allows for information to be transmitted to another system in an actionable way, scalable. All of these things that are in there, but they become the criteria for how to ensure that proposed mechanism is going to scale.
And actionable information, to me, has always been in these 7 concepts. Actionable information is really the most important one here, because what we're saying here is that the only thing that we want to go between systems is something that will help the other system do something, right? And by the fact that they're 2 different systems, you have to assume that they're not the same type of systems. In other words, they're not HVAC systems. So something like I always go to PID loop, something like a PID loop or some kind of control within a controller. It happens in an HVAC system, right? And typically speaking, no other system in the building cares about that, right? It cares about what actionable information that's come out of that from a VAV or from an air handling unit or for something that will actually influence some other system. If it's not actionable, then it's not really, it doesn't need to go outside the domain. So I actually think that's the sort of the key to understanding how systems should be thought of to work together. Would love to get thoughts.
So I'm going to ask this question. In order for interoperability to truly occur and get the value, do the systems, equipment, devices, the whatevers need to be integrated?
I would say that if you imagine this as a picture of system of systems, I would say that there is every chance that each of these systems, each of these nodes is either a discrete device or a collection of other devices that is integrated to do something very specific. That's the way I think about it.
So your answer is yes.
Yes, well, it can be, but it can also be a discrete system that it's just one thing. But in most cases, it's yes. What do you think, Doug?
I'm not sure really how to answer that. Again, I think the word integrated and interoperability, they just don't live well together. That doesn't mean that every system is going to be interoperable. Ideally, in the end, they will be, but you still have a lot of legacy systems out there that are, they weren't designed off of a common model. So the only way to get them to communicate and exchange information properly is through integration. But we're going to just repeat this cycle of inefficiency unless we start to design the systems to be interoperable from the beginning. So you don't need to do that. So they have to coexist. This is a model for interoperability, not for integration. I think that, a gateway that is a system that normalized all the southbound legacy disparate systems together and became the foundation for that interoperability going northbound or east-west. That's great. That's a starting point. But I also think you need to have that's still a lot of effort. It's a lot of middleware to wire everything up through a gateway. And the best approach is to start having new products, new systems that are coming online, adhere to a common standard for interoperability, and not have to worry about that integration word anymore. And a key where there's a ability to not have to deal with legacy is in a completely virtual world. That's connected digital twins. So the way digital twins can connect together, there's no disparate legacy standards that those digital twins are adhering to now. It's all emergent. It's all nascent. So if we create a standard for interoperability for connected digital twins that forms a foundation for how the physical world could interoperate, it starts to create some value by itself, but then insights that could go back down into those systems that are being developed and say, hey, I can benefit from having a digital twin of my smart device that I'm building because it'll help me optimize the manufacturing design of it. And then I get to benefit of that digital twin if I'm offering my product as a service where I have all those insights. So there's benefit, I think, as a strategy from applying the model of interoperability to digital twins first.
Anto or Doug, could you explain to us what holistic info flow and federated repo stand for in this context?
I'll take federated repo. This is really about where the data is stored, right? Because one of the things that some people aspire to is a big data lake. The IDL is another way of sort of thinking about it. It's not exactly the same, right? But this whole concept of some of the people that sort of we're working on with this project that Rick was mentioning went straight there. We need to put everything in one place and then do something with all of that data, right? Federated repo says you don't do that at all. You put the data, or the data needs to sit where they naturally sit, where they are best sit, and some kind of federation of all of those data stores should exist, obviously securely with access and everything else, so that any of the systems in the systems of systems can access the data that it needs from another system without this sort of big data lake kind of concepts. That's kind of the key to the federated repository of data, which is the full title of it.
maybe Anto, if you just said federated data, because we're not, I think part of the problem is repo, just not knowing what that referred to. So you said federated data, then you just have to explain the data is dispersed to where it's designed to sit. We're not asking you to move it into a data lake. So that would be easy.
Yeah, it's that's it. That was done in the graphics, because in
Yeah.
the paper itself, there's actually a section that actually makes it very clear.
Explains all that. Yeah. Yep.
And holistic info flow.
I'll take that. I mean, that just goes back to where you're looking at data not being interoperable within a specific domain or location on the network, like where you're interoperable at the edge, but then you don't really care about how that data flows northbound and who's consuming it northbound, that you actually look at how the data would be flowed end to end from southbound to northbound, east west, to appreciate the context that's needed in order to be meaningful and actionable across the entire network.
So Doug, to clarify that, is the implication essentially unrestricted data flow?
I don't, it's holistic data flow. It's different. I mean, you still have restrictions based upon who you want to connect with and share that information with, but it's about understanding all the uses of that data, which contextualizes really information, and so that you're able to have the highest value of that information across, again, not just looking at it from an IoT centric world, it's separate from a business or enterprise system world, that those two worlds really should converge, just like IT/OT is, to get the highest value.
Yeah, I guess when I say unrestricted, I'm not talking about permissions, in terms of who gets to see it. I'm just saying that whether it's east, west, north, south, there's no restrictions on how the data can flow. If I'm south and I need it from the north, and I'm east and I need it from the west, whatever it might be, I should be able to have access to. That's what I mean by unrestricted.
And it should flow without the need for further annotation or contextualization, that you have defined it one time as close to the source of that information as possible. And the way it's transmitted closest to that source is how it could be valuable across an entire flow.
Yeah.
Which is done using models, right? This is why the model based.
Yeah.
And
that's why I was trying to distinguish, because I think you define the data in the model, and then I'm just arguing that the flow of data means there aren't any restrictions on whether system A can talk to system B, etc. On
there shouldn't be any structural restriction, is really what you mean.
Right. Yeah, correct.
Like what it is in HVAC, if there happens to be a device that's on the field bus, it does not have an unrestricted access to something that's somewhere else. I mean, because it's constrained to be in that field bus, and it needs conversions and all sorts of things to go elsewhere. This does not speak to that. This speaks to, regardless where it is, if it's based on a model, you should be able to access it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
The other diagram that I think we've seen this before on Monday Live is this one. This originated actually from Harbor Research, from Glenn, but this was sort of redone for this paper. And this is really sort of the evolution of how we think about system of systems, from product to when product gets some kind of smart added to it. And then when that smart gets communications added to it, so it gets connected, right? So that's probably where we are sort of now in HVAC mostly. And then there's product systems. That's basically just sort of a collection of things that work together. And then you get to system of systems, where you have everything accessible, as we were saying with Steve, and it's all being driven essentially by some kind of business management system. So it doesn't matter, which piece of data is needed for to do something that is business management related. It should be able to just do it. Again, going back to regardless where it is. Questions on this?
And I think one of the things for me, Anto, that sometimes if you go back to your first page where you got the dots and another one, go back one more page that's it. When I'm looking at the dots here, and I'm looking at the second one up from the right there, where it's got 4 lines going into it. Yeah, the next one up, it's got obviously that system needs data and interoperation with the ones it's directly connected to. But the one on the far left bottom, isn't connected directly, or is not, isn't dependent upon those other ones connected, but it's able to dip into the information should it be necessary. And it's just interesting to look at those dotted lines about the difference between the ones, and it's thinking about who needs the information directly to be functional, whereas the other one can just dip in and out and operate with the other system as and when it needs it.
Yeah, and that's when you start to sort of think about, maybe what this thing is doing. This thing is for this systems, this thing is aggregating these 2 pieces or doing some kind of combinational of something. Right, from a business perspective.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of that, is to see what's coming from here, see what's coming from here, and then send some result going here. Again, actionable information is what these lines are supposed to be.
Well, those are actually the weighted synaptic connections between neurons in a brain or a convolutional neural network. That's exactly what it is. And that's the whole learning is tuning those synaptic connections.
Yeah, and we've spent quite a few million years
with the connected silos when we were at AHR or IBCon last. I mean, that's a brain right there.
Well, to simplify it, and in working with the Linux Foundation, reading more about how other industries are doing it, rather than thinking of it as a system, just think of it as a software application.
Sure.
Okay, so if it's a software application, it's a brain, it's running somewhere. That's a good point. But the data that it needs to do its next calculation or to do its next analysis or whatever, its next clock cycle, if you think about the processor, where the data is and how the data is left where it belongs. I think we're gonna try and use the language of the Linux Foundation to describe these different systems as software, and then separately describe data as being normalized so that the software can use the data no matter where the data is. And as I was explaining it to a non-technical person just 2 days ago, that seemed to make sense. And it's like, well, isn't that the way it is now? It's like, no. The data has to be specifically designed for the software application. And that's the way it's been since the beginning of time, at least 60 years anyway. But the data was designed for the software application. Today, we're saying, let's design the software and the data separately, in effect, so that the data can be where it's supposed to be, and the application can figure out how to get the data, on demand or just in time. But the Linux Foundation kind of uses some different analogies to try and get people's heads out of the way we've done things before and start to think about the way we can do things now.
Well, Steve Ballmer, that was the multi-billion-dollar idea behind Microsoft. I mean, that was it in 1995. In The Road Ahead, Bill Gates talked about that very problem. They were a software company, and they were dealing with hauling in every different type and model of printer out there so they could make it compatible with their Windows OS. And they just flipped it around. They said, you're gonna write this driver for a printer according to this standard, And everybody pushed back. They said, you know, printers do too many things. There's too much dissimilarity. It's like, no, printers, they print, they run out of paper, they run out of ink, they jam up. You know, I'm kind of running out of things. And so that, you know, that was the multi-billion-dollar idea behind turning, if we abstracted all hardware and turned it into software, now you're just connecting software. And you've got one level playing field and a medium to have these software components talk to each other. So really they should be obscure. All hardware should be, it's an interface, right? It's object-oriented software interface.
And
There is no hardware. Only
and the
software.
way to do that is through modeling, right? It's through
Right.
modeling the data.
Right. So to Roger, I think the diagram here is in many regards, you know, representative of how things are in practice. But from an ideal perspective, I view what we want to have, to getting back to that holistic flow dot. What we want is a flat architecture. Basically, all your systems are on a single line and they all can talk. The internet, just think of the internet, right? Anybody can get to anything. And, or at least, I mean, right? There's no restrictions, unless it's permission type situation, but conceptually you can go to any site you want, and any OT system should be able to get to any other OT system as needed. And if we solve the model problem, then you get what you need to do, because you can't predict the future. That's the whole point of system of systems. So just because system A only needs to talk to systems B and D today doesn't mean it won't need to talk to system F in the future. So I don't want to have to go through the ones I'm already connected to get to F. I just want to go directly from A to F.
Yep.
When I need to.
Yep.
So what have we learned here? How does this help map system of systems to our challenges?
I think one of the important things, we talked about this last week in one of our calls, is making sure that it's clear that, you know, a key difference between interoperable and integrated has to do with that native ability to communicate, as opposed to something that's engineered every time, right? We kind of forget about that part of it, right? So I have to keep reminding myself of that, you know, the difference between a system of systems that is highly dependent on APIs, for instance. Those are all engineered, predefined connections, as opposed to a true, more publish, subscribe, standards-based communication path. And that's the thing to keep in mind that we're trying to drive towards.
So, Doug, you've heard us talk. Obviously, one of the challenges is that the amount of legacy systems in buildings is the majority by far. It's kind of, you know, out of the building stock, only 1% is built any one year. So legacy systems just sort of stay there for a long time, which is maybe not the sort of the situation in other industries. But other than that, how do you sort of interpret the conversations you've heard here today in the context of interoperability framework?
Well, I think a key is just a shift in mindset. You know, it's hard. You know, there's legacy systems and buildings that have been in place for 20 years. Well, there's legacy mindsets that have been there just as long. And it is so hard to let go of something that it is entrenched in your mind, like the concept of integrated, and letting go of that. to be able to use another concept and have it actually make sense in your head. So I think, you know, a shift in mindset is number one, and that's a challenge in itself. The other thing is, I do believe that you do need some type of a gateway that normalizes everything to that standard mechanism for interoperability, to be able to leverage all the data that's coming from the legacy systems, but then enable it to be used everywhere else across systems in a standardized way. And then, yeah, buildings are a challenge more so than other environments where a system approach has been implemented successfully. It was implemented in a DoD and in transportation systems. Much of those are not bound to a 30-year life cycle. So buildings become more of a challenge, but buildings are also a key part of every built infrastructure, from an airport to a college campus. Everything starts with buildings. It becomes a key foundation for information that needs to be exchanged. So it needs to be part of that system of systems, but maybe more from the external information exchange, from a system to other buildings or city systems and transportation systems, and maybe not so much internally to the equipment within a building at this point.
When I get the transcript of this week's show, I'm going to count how many times we said the word systems. Ken, wondering if you've been absorbing this conversation, wondering if you can sort of recap your sort of what you've learned here. If you can find the mute button.
Yeah, okay, sorry
There
about
you
that. Absorbing is a good word. Yeah, we definitely have to create clarity around these two words, because there's a lot of subtlety in both of them. And we certainly in the past have been focused on integration, and the interoperability piece is much more complex. This trying to depict this ability to kind of grow forward, it intrigues me. I keep hearing that you not only want this interoperability to be there as a real thing, but as new systems develop new capabilities, you want it to be able to learn and automatically assume. So that's kind of an interesting side of it as well, that I think we need to explore a little bit. I don't know, great, want to wrap up. It's a great topic. I don't think we're done yet trying to explain the subtle differences. I hope we can add some more clarity as we move through the month here.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thanks, Doug, again for joining us. Let's bring this to a wrap. Get the video up sometime today or tomorrow or Wednesday. Otherwise, have a great week, and we'll be back here next Monday. Bye all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.